My guest, Linda Zimmerman, will be on hand to talk about animal intuition and how UFOs affect animals. See you in about 5 minutes. Grab your popcorn and snacks. Find a comfy spot, take a seat or lie down, and let me transport you to a place of fantasy, ghost stories, ancient legends, odd creatures, alien encounters, and other magical topics. You may even decide to join the conversation. From faraway lands to your own backyard, with a small dash of pixie dust, turn out the lights and open your minds. The journey is about to begin. Good evening, everybody. I hope you had a great day. I had a great day. I'm going to have a great night, too, with this show. I said we got a good show coming. My name is Charlotte. I'm going to be your host for the next hour. I'm also the owner of the California Haunts Paranormal Investigation Team, based out of Sacramento, California. Let me make a little adjustment here. There we go. Boom. We're 48 strong up and down the state of California. So what that means is that if you have a paranormal issue going on in your home, or you think you might have a paranormal issue, we can get to you because we are almost, we've got somebody in almost every county of the state. And if we're like 3 or 4 away from you, we'll still get to you no matter what. So you can find us at CaliforniaHaunts.org, CaliforniaHauntsRadio.com, Facebook. Find me on Facebook, and let me know what's going on, and I'll see if I can get some help for you. Okay. Anyway, welcome tonight. If you're watching from Facebook, please hit that follow button. If you're watching from YouTube, please hit. I missed my button. Hang on. See, speaking of buttons, there we go. If you're watching from Facebook, please hit that follow button. If you're watching from YouTube, please click on that. If you're watching from YouTube and you're new, rather, please click on that little ghost down in the bottom right-hand corner, and he will make you a subscriber to our YouTube page. Our YouTube page has more than 350 videos over there of varying topics. We don't always cover paranormal stuff because I'm a journalist. I'm a photojournalist, so I like to change it up a little bit, right? So if I think there's something over there for everybody, okay? A little something over there. I think you'll like it. If you're watching from Twitch, please hit that follow button, and the same thing goes for TikTok. Anyway, I want to keep you guys abreast of this. Saturday, I will be teaching a Psychic Development class level 1, and that'll be taught at 5 p.m. Pacific on Saturday afternoon, California time, right? And what that class teaches you is it teaches you how to open and close that door, because it's a door that you can open. Some people think it's a pretend door. Well, psychics think it's like an ethereal door that opens and closes. And what that does by teaching you this is that sometimes new psychics will begin by opening up all the way. And the issue with that is not just nice stuff comes through. You start getting bad stuff. So the way to control that is to be able to control the opening and closing of that door. It's all about controlling that door. So what I will teach you is how to open the door, how to leave your body, go visit your spirit library, your spirit guide, your spirit animal, your spirit object, give notes to your spirit guide. You can even talk to them, have a conversation with your spirit guide, but then you come back into your own body. And that's what that teaches you. And that's the exercise to teach you how to open and close that door. All right? So if you're interested in that, visit the California Haunts Paranormal Investigation Team Meetup site. Sign up for Meetup. It's free. There's no charge. And it's listed over on the Meetup under events. All right? Also, on the following Saturday, I will be teaching the second part of that class, which is Psychic Development Class 2, which delves further into psychic abilities. And in that class, we do exercises so that we can tell exactly where your psychic abilities are pointing, because not everybody is capable of doing everything psychically, right? There's clairvoyance, clairaudience. That's how we find out, is we spend a couple hours delving into what you have, the skills that you have, and doing exercises to see just exactly what type of talent you got, and then we know where to grow from there. All right. Anyway, tonight's guest. See, that was quick. I just spewed all that out, didn't I? Tonight's guest, Linda Zimmerman. Great guest. She talks about animal intuition and animals and UFOs. How do UFOs affect animals? I never really thought about that until I heard her speak on it. It kind of blew my mind. So I wanted to get her on to talk about that tonight. So that's what we're going to be discussing tonight. So give me a minute here. Let me push this button. Hello, Jerry. Okay, let's see who was in the room here. Who was in the house? Anyway, Linda's in the green room right now. So without further ado, let's bring her in and ask her. Hello.
Hello.
How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I am good. When I heard you on the other show, you totally blew my mind, because I never thought about animals and UFOs or anything like that. It never occurred to me that they might have an effect. But then again, it makes sense, because when you think about maybe UFOs affecting electricity and stuff, and that would mean they're affecting the EMF levels, which would probably affect the animals just like EMF affects us.
Exactly. And it wasn't something I came into this field saying, I'm going to study this, I was mostly studying UFO cases in the Hudson Valley of New York, its long history of that.
Mm-hmm.
And I actually made a joke one day. I said, well, if it wasn't for dogs, we'd miss half of these UFOs, because so many cases dogs or some other animals alert the humans to something going on, and
Mm-hmm.
then the humans see it, and I was like, okay, time out, what's going on here? And so, having a science background, I said, before we get into the that this is some paranormal sixth sense, which it still could be,
Mm-hmm.
let's look at the science of
Sure.
it. So that began my journey down that rabbit hole.
When you talk about this, is it something similar? Like I say, the EMF, affects everybody, especially even humans. I mean, EMF is horrible on people's brains when
Mhm.
they get hit with a lot of it. Is just like with the earthquakes. I mean, that's changes in the electromagnetic field, no matter how you slice it. So is that what's going on with dogs and with like dogs and UFOs, or what do you
I,
think?
I yeah, I think that is the primary force that's affecting this. There's so many cases of EMF stalling cars, static on radios and TV. And I discovered that animals have something called magnetoreception. And what it is their ability to sense magnetic fields so minutely. They did a study of dogs. University did a study of dogs, and apparently the Earth's magnetic field shifts a little bit during the day, and
Mm-hmm.
dogs could sense that immediately. So, if a craft is coming in with strong enough EMF fields to disrupt your electrical appliances,
Mm-hmm.
imagine what's happening to these poor animals. I liken it to, I'm not a roller coaster fan, so I liken it to being put on a roller coaster, turned upside down, spun around. Their whole world must be disoriented when these craft are around.
Well, I know, if, like I wrote in the letter to you from personal, experience with my dog, before the Loma Prieta earthquake hit, and what happened. Because, I mean, it was just as, I don't know if anybody remembers those little white fence things they used to sell. I think a dollar store or someplace used to sell them, and you could sit. They
Mhm,
were only like maybe a foot and a half tall, and you could
mhm.
like surround your plants with them. And that's what he got his head wedged in. I couldn't figure out why. Why would he do that? Why would he run literally into this thing? And I mean, that would take a
Wow.
lot because the holes on there aren't that big anyway. And then right after I got him cut out of it, then the earthquake hit.
Wow. See, he was disturbed. He knew something was happening. For years, scientists were saying it's all anecdotal evidence that animals can detect earthquakes. Well,
Mm-hmm.
you know, today's anecdotal evidence is tomorrow's science if you study it. There's been, going back to the ancient Greeks, we're talking about animal reactions. And finally, there are some very good scientific studies. The BBC did a series on the or show on this with some universities doing hard science where animals, I think it was up to 3 weeks in advance of an earthquake, their behavior starts to change.
Hmm.
And there was one study, I believe it was in Peru, that they're tracking they put tracking devices on animals, and they could see they started moving differently a couple of weeks before. And within a few days of where the epicenter of the earthquake was, the animals had already left days before. So
Wow.
they know very far in advance, and we really need to start paying attention to animal reactions, not just UFOs, earthquakes,
Right.
tsunami. Many stories, that horrible Indonesian tsunami that killed over 200,000 people. Um, Elephants were running to high ground, cattle, all sorts of animals. They knew they were
Mm-hmm.
you see animals running away from the coast you'd better get to high ground.
Oh, absolutely. It makes a lot of sense, and I think, like you say, they need to study that more because instead of having these early warning earthquake systems that let you know what 20 minutes, 30 minutes before,
Yeah, when it's
you,
too late.
yeah, you could be alerted a heck of a lot earlier by watching the animals.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I think the human race is rather arrogant, and we in our science, what's a lowly animal going to tell us? Well, a lot if
Hmm.
you pay attention.
Hmm. So when you talk about animals and UFOs, what stories have you heard about that?
Yeah, few hundred, maybe 1,000. And one of my favorites was 1981, Muscatine, Iowa. There was on the Mississippi River a bridge, and there was a toll taker. He's a very lonely job at night, and it's about 3 o'clock in the morning, and he used to bring carrots to feed the wild rabbits
Hmm.
and somebody to talk to. So he goes out, and the rabbits were. Uh, we used to have rabbits. I never saw a rabbit do this. Laying flat with its legs sticking out,
Hmm.
not moving. He thought they were all dead. And then he realized there was this brightly lit yellow orange craft over the river, and it moved in a unique step pattern up and over, just cleared the bridge and took off. And as soon as the UFO took off, it was like a switch went off. The rabbits regained the ability to move, jumped up and took off. So what I don't know, do you know rabbits at all? Do you
I do, I do. Actually, I have a couple.
what do you know what would trigger that kind of catatonic state?
I have no clue, none
Yeah.
whatsoever.
So something happened to the rabbits that they were either terrified or subdued, something. And all the person heard, he said, was a slight whizzing sound. Um, so there were many other witnesses, human witnesses that night, but I think the
Hmm.
reactions of the rabbits are really telling.
It kind of reminds me of a shark being turned upside down.
And how does that happen?
Because of, like the smaller sharks, like people will be out in the water with them and they flip them upside down and then they're docile. It's like
Oh,
they're
okay.
asleep. So it's interesting.
Yeah, there are other cases where guard dogs who are super alert,
Hmm.
usually very, very aggressive, in the presence of a UFO, just sit down and, you know, they're just, it's like they're drugged. And many cases of animals seemingly paralyzed. There's a whole range of reactions, and people know their pets. I
Yeah.
mean, you know, dogs are your cats, they're your family. You know them sometimes better than you know your own, brothers, sisters, spouses.
Hmm.
So you know when it's like your dog jamming his head in the fence
Hmm.
for what reason? And the same thing, your livestock. If you're an outdoorsman, you know what happens in the woods with animals. One of the things I did once I started learning, wow, these animals really are the early warning systems for UFOs. I started examining old cases, and we've all heard Rendlesham, a million times over. But you
Hmm.
look at it again, look at the animal reactions. I think it was Jim Peniston was saying the animals were running scared through the woods. They wanted to get away from this. And one of the biggest skeptic excuses to that whole thing was they were these trained Air Force officers were seeing the light from the lighthouse, from the Orford Ness lighthouse. Well, these animals in the forest grew up seeing that light every night of their lives. Suddenly that night, they're like panicked. Oh my God, there's a lighthouse. Run for your lives. No,
Hmm.
something else was happening. So you can really go back and re examine old cases and realize what has been overlooked.
Hmm. Could it also be a sound issue too? I mean, because animals are really sensitive to sound, like you say, the low hum with the rabbits and the other animals could affect them. I mean, look at the whole thing with the dog whistle, right? You don't hear it, but they do, and they react a certain way.
Absolutely. Dogs' hearing is superb. Cats are even better.
Hmm.
Rabbits have those ears for a reason. They're, they're many animals have far superior hearing in the higher frequencies. So early on in the research, I thought, well, we can stick a fork in it. It's all high frequency sound until
Hmm.
I came upon the parrots and chickens. I didn't realize birds, they hear very low frequencies. We hear about 20 hertz to 20,000 hertz.
Hmm.
Dogs and cats, 40, 50, 60,000 hertz.
Hmm.
Birds, some of them only hear about 2 to 4,000 hertz. So we're 20, they're 2 to 4.
Hmm.
So if a bird is reacting to sound, we should hear it, and human witnesses don't.
Hmm.
The other end of that spectrum is the infrasound, the very, very low frequencies we don't hear below 20 hertz.
Right.
So that's a possibility as well. Things like carrier pigeons hear, I think it's like 0.5 hertz, so they hear very, very low. But I think in the bird's case, it again goes back to that magnetoreception, their ability to sense electromagnetic fields.
Hmm.
Um, because things, again, like pigeons, they physically see the magnetic field. There was a great, the University of Urbana-Champaign, I think it is, in Illinois. They generated these illustrations, like if a bird's looking straight north, it sees a curve in front of
Hmm.
it. Tilting its head side to side, that curve angles more. So they literally have magnetic road maps in the sky. And again, if a UFO is coming by with a strong magnetic field, that whole their whole world is being turned upside down.
Absolutely fascinating. And when you talk about the bird hearing low frequencies, as a ghost hunter, with the EVP work we do, but I can attest to this. I have birds in this house. I have activity in this house. I have one bird in particular that in the mornings I'll wake up and she's whistling stuff I never trained her or talking, stuff I
Oh.
never taught her to do. Somebody's teaching her.
Right,
And it's not
right.
the TV either because I don't have it on all the time. So somebody's teaching her at late at night, teaching her stuff.
Do you have the ability to record infrasound?
I'm going to start doing that. Yeah, I do. That's the thing. I'm going to make it. I'm going to make it a point to do it because it's really weird. My father always liked birds. He always
Mhm.
liked to teach them to talk. So that's who I think was
Okay.
doing it. But I mean, because he's been gone 11 years.
Hmm.
But that's what I mean. Like you say with the whole sound thing, it makes a lot of sense with the birds to me.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think both the fields of, I've been a ghost hunter for 25 years,
Hmm.
and that with the UFO fields, pay attention to the animal reactions. They often see and sense things in the paranormal realm way before us as well. So I think if we have instruments that mimic their abilities, we'll
Hmm.
have a better chance at recording evidence.
Hmm. Um, and the stuff you've looked at, or seen rather, with the UFOs, how many times in each, or how many cases do you know of that where there's an animal documented as being affected?
Um, I have personally interviewed hundreds of people, and I've gone back to 1873, where I found the first animal reaction. There has to be thousands of cases. The case in 1873 was amazing down in Texas and surrounding states. They were newspapers reporting a snake in the sky, some snake-shaped object or something long and cylindrical, probably, moving across the sky. The first UFO-related death occurred when a horse was so spooked by this, he took off. The wagon, who was driving the wagon, fell off and was trampled and killed. There was, I think, in Kansas, a cavalry was trying to do some exercises with the cavalry, and this craft came over and it became complete chaos. The horses just went wild. They couldn't even control them. So, critics who say it's all modern stealth, black project technology, not in 1873.
No.
So yeah, it goes way back.
In fact, my guest tomorrow is going to be talking about cowboys and their paranormal encounters with different things.
There you go.
So it's going to be interesting. So it's kind of yours is kind of leading into his.
There you go.
See that?
Bonham, Texas, 1873.
It wasn't planned that way, but somebody ended up hitting tonight. It's kind of cool. When you think about these sounds, whatever they're hearing is terrifying them. To the point that, because when you look at your dog, dogs are skittish anyway. Cats are skittish to begin with. Little sounds will trigger them up, but whatever this is, like you're saying, it's terrifying enough to make them run.
And that trauma lasts sometimes a day, a week, sometimes the rest of their lives. When there's fireworks, dogs are terrified. Usually the next day they're fine. Sometimes an hour later they're okay. I had a poor collie mix who would jump in the bathtub and start clawing. I don't know why she thought she could dig in the bathtub. Couldn't get her in the bathtub for a bath, but she was so scared by the sound. And shortly after the fireworks ended, she was herself again. But cows will give a depleted amount of milk. Sometimes they stop giving milk. Horses will not go to the site of a landing. There was a case where the cows and the horses would never go back to that spot. There's a sad case of a goat in France. All the female goats, their whole reproductive cycles changed, and the male goat, as they put it, stopped doing his job after this encounter, and they slaughtered and ate him. So unfortunately for that male goat. But yeah, it's, brave guard dogs hiding under the bed, cats clawing and fighting each other to get through a screen door, dog running into a barbed wire fence. One cat was so terrified he ran into the side of a garage and practically knocked himself out, was dazed. So these animals are risking injury to get away from whatever this is, and the trauma will stay with them, as I said, sometimes forever.
Well, that's what people don't realize either, because they think animals have short memories, like dogs. I had a rescue who was hell on wheels, and I'm going to say that because whatever the original people did to her, And I remember I'd sit with her out front, and if she heard an SUV with a big muffler or a motorcycle, she would run for the front door and try to claw through it.
Oh, that's horrible. The poor thing.
I had her like 10 years, and this went on every year I had her.
And
so when people say that they have a short memory, they don't. They remember everything.
No. Yeah, we had a beautiful big German Shepherd named Shadow, and again, he was abused, abandoned with a broken leg. What they did to this poor thing. And sweetest thing when we got to know him, but we always said he had issues. Certain, like you said, certain triggers, and you just have to be patient because you don't know what they've been through.
So yeah, what I'm trying to say is that when you say that they're afraid of these spots where they might have witnessed something or they know that something happened, it makes a lot of sense that they're going to remember about that spot and not go there. Exactly.
And the overwhelming response is fear. And somebody suggested maybe somehow they know that no good is going to come of these encounters. A lot of dogs disappear. Animals have been found dead after encounters. There's the whole animal mutilation thing. Is that part of it? I really don't discuss that. I discuss the living animals' reactions, but there does seem to be a history when animals meet UFOs, animals lose.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And so they probably have an instinct and they know. Because that's the other thing. We don't even know with animals, like if you have a family or a group of animals, we don't even know how the hell they communicate, really. And if they can pass stuff on down to each other like humans do.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. That would probably be a very healthy survival skill.
Mm-hmm.
Out in the wild, teach, your the next generation, stay away from this, stay away from that. So I think that's probably an ability they would have to have. How they do it, like you said, I don't know.
Mm-hmm. So, like you're saying, do you think it's maybe a combination of both of maybe EMF levels getting messed up and the whole sound thing?
Mm-hmm. And vibration is another thing. There's birds have special sensors for vibration. When they're standing in water, they're not just cooling their legs. They can feel a fish going by, and fish, they have those lateral lines on their sides, which are also very sensitive to vibration. There's a great case from Arizona. Some guys were camping and a UFO, it's at night, a UFO's coming across the lake, and they had their fishing poles in their boat. They'd pulled their boat up on shore. The fishing poles start rattling in the boat. So there's some sort of vibration. And for 200 feet around, fish are jumping out of the water. So something was, and obviously with the fishing poles rattling, there could have been EMF, but clearly there was some sort of vibration, and it freaked the fish right out of the lake, leaping out. So it could be barometric pressure. Again, birds can sense a pressure difference in just 15 feet. They're that sensitive. So there are cases where UFOs, they have such, you may have heard of them, they exert so much pressure, people are actually knocked to the ground. That's extreme. It's rare, but people have felt pressure. So it's all of the senses and then some, I think, is the short answer.
And how long have you been looking into this?
Many years. I've been, studying UFOs in this area, for looking into it for decades, and I lived through, the big wave in the 1980s. But really intensely, I'd say the last 5 years, I have really intensely been going in to the animal reactions, and then came out with the book, I think 2 years ago, Animal Reactions to UFOs. And it's been a nice reception. A lot of, oh, thank you. There it is. A lot of investigators say, it's not anything I even considered, but they're going to start using this, in future investigations. And again, to go over previous cases, some investigators told me they don't even ask about animal reactions. And if the witness tells them about it, they'll jot a note maybe, but I think everyone has to be paying more attention. And by the way, the cat on the cover there, the cat eye, was a rescue cat. I opened my door one day and she ran in. Beautiful, beautiful cat. And actually my niece wanted to adopt her, but so I thought I'd make her the cover cat
That's
for
awesome.
the book.
I love the cover. I love the cover of that with the UFO in the eyeball. That's really cool.
Thank you.
Really creative. But animals do have these senses, and I think we tend to overlook them. I mean, even with paranormal, and you know this from ghost hunting. Even I mean, I have a dog right now that likes to stand on the back of my couch, and she's only 3 years old, and she's looking at something back there. I don't know what's behind the couch, but she's there. So I don't know
Yes.
who's there or what the heck.
Well, she know, and I always would get calls from people who wanted, to have a paranormal investigation, and they say, "My cat's freaking me out. She's looking at something and running from something." There was a great case in Nyack, New York, which is on the Hudson River, old town, a lot of old homes, and this woman had a cat, and she'd put the food in the kitchen, but the cat would walk in, would never walk in front of the stove, would go off to the right, down and around to get to her food. And they're like, what is going on? They find out a previous owner had committed suicide by blowing out the pilot light, sticking her head in the stove and committing suicide. And that cat knew there was something still there. That cat would never walk across where the woman had died.
See, I think science needs, like you say, science needs to take a more intense look at animals.
Absolutely. It's high time. They have been grossly overlooked and underrated.
Because I mean, they tend to, like you say, they tend to sense a lot more than we do. And of course, you just need to follow sometimes what they're doing.
Yeah. Case in New Jersey, two women were walking their big German Shepherd named Hans, and Hans was an extremely protective dog, and they see a dumbbell-shaped craft, and the two women are mesmerized by this. Poor Hans is whimpering and trying to dig a hole to hide in. And they're were drawn to this. They wanted to go towards this craft. They look at Hans' reaction and they think, maybe we better run. And that's what they did. If that animal with those instincts is terrified, don't go towards whatever it is.
Absolutely. If it were me, I'd be like, yep. You don't want to go there? I'm fine with it. Let's go.
That's right. Thank you, Hans.
I'm good. Let's go. What's a common, when you're looking at these cases, is there anything in particular that seems like a common denominator with these animals?
Definitely the fear. They just act uncharacteristically. It's, there can be a fearful dog, and like the birds, chickens, there's a chicken, we have it in our vernacular that it means scared.
Right.
But when you see them reacting completely out of character, and often way before the craft is even seen, and continue often after the craft is gone, the human witness seeing, hearing, experience it before and after. So it's like there are these early warning systems, and sometimes it's not fear. Sometimes, like I said, it's almost like they're subdued. They're like almost drugged. But yeah, I'd have to go back to the common characteristic is fear, often to the point of completely unhinged panic, willing to try to run through a wall. Often horses in their stalls will be trying to kick the walls down. Cows will stampede and knock down the fence or corral. Sheep will do the same thing. So and any animal you can imagine. Probably the best story, because it involves so many different types of animals, was the Phoenix Zoo in 1993. A large lighted craft was slowly passing over. The guard's truck stalled. His lights went out, so clearly EMF. But the craft was also beaming down a bright blue light like into the lion and tiger pen, was basically scanning the whole zoo.
Mm-hmm.
And the two guards said, every animal in the zoo. Now that's probably representing animals from every continent, from deserts, from mountains, you know. Every animal in the zoo was reacting with cries of alarm. So talk about this being a universal reaction. That is just the most definitive case that I know of.
That is incredible. That's a lot of animals with different traits and everything that are reacting.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And it couldn't just be because of the light beaming down, because a lot of animals are indoors for the night and
Mm-hmm.
couldn't see the light. And some are just housed indoors anyway, depending on the species. So it had to be something, EMF, sound, vibration, again, something we don't even understand.
Mm-hmm.
And they had to bring in the veterinarian to check out all the animals because they didn't know if they had been hurt, you know, trying to get out of their enclosures, you know, what had been done to them by this light or something else.
Mm-hmm.
So it is a universal effect.
Well, can you imagine? You're in this enclosure anyway. Some of those enclosures are indoors even, and then you get this feeling you want to get out, and there's no place to go.
Yes. Yeah, it's horrible. I really feel for these animals. You read their complete panic, and a lot of them are just inconsolable. You know, the humans are trying to help. They don't want any part. They just want to get away
Mm-hmm.
from whatever is causing this.
When you talk about animals disappearing, because you mentioned that earlier, what do you mean exactly?
Well, unfortunately, sometimes in these events, the animals will just be gone. They say, "Oh, they just ran off." Well, maybe. But there was a case in New Zealand. I'll probably get this wrong. Ohinapaka, New Zealand, and it was a cattle ranch, and they saw this cone-shaped UFO. The man, his horse, his cattle dogs were all paralyzed during this. In fact, he said the horse's mane stood up. I didn't know a horse's mane hair could stand up on end, but it did. And they came to, you know, the craft went away. They could move. They found out their prize bull was missing from the middle of the corral. There was no way to get this out unless you airlifted this bull out of there. The famous Mothman incident in
Mm-hmm.
West Virginia. If you read the newspapers locally leading up to that event, a
Mm-hmm.
lot of dogs went missing, which is scary. And I even went to the lost and found columns in the newspapers.
Mm-hmm.
Um, lost dog. Have you seen my dog? Something was going on there where dogs were disappearing. Um, it's a very dark side of this whole
Mm-hmm.
phenomenon, which is quite disturbing. People have, you know, you can take it or leave their stories, but some people with abduction experiences claim to see animals on board these craft as well. So that, you know, I can neither prove nor disprove, but these animals are going somewhere.
And the thing that comes to mind is, who in their right mind is going to go steal a bull?
Yeah, unless from the middle of a, you know, it's the way they described it, you would have to drive a truck through these fences to get to this. It just couldn't physically happen.
No,
So,
no. And bulls are mean as heck too. So I mean,
yeah. And as they put out, as the ranchers said, he had more than enough to keep him happy because he was in an enclosure with a lot of females.
right
So
in a woman.
That bull had no reason to go anywhere.
It's just frightening. It's frightening when you think about it, and it's frightening when you think like the reports of them doing experiments, genetic experiments on people. What if they're doing these genetic experiences on your pet, and they take your dog and they're doing experiments?
Oh boy. Take me, do not touch a hair on my dog's head.
Yeah.
I mean, it's like when it happens to children.
Mm-hmm.
Children and animals, please, that is horrific. That gets me very upset to think of, the innocent victims of these cases.
But then again, you think about this, and you think about these dogmen, and you kind of expand out in this. You think about these creatures that people see, like the dogmen and stuff, and it makes a lot of sense, because I've always thought, in a lot of ways, and I know I've gotten some flack talking to people about the Sasquatch and all this, but I always felt that like these dogmen and stuff were experiments that didn't work out, and they re-released them back on onto the earth.
It's possible. There's I can't say no to anything after all I've dealt with.
Right.
I originally really fought the idea when I'd give a ghost lecture. People said before I was writing about UFOs, oh, you should do that too because they're connected.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, really? How is, the ghost of your grandmother connected with a UFO? But the more I researched this, the more interviews I did, strong areas of paranormal, high strangeness, whatever, also seem to be areas of a lot of sightings of UFOs. And, I'm still not easy with that, but I absolutely have to admit that there's some connection there.
What is one of the stories that caught your attention the most, or that bothers you the most about it?
Bothers me the most. There was a case in South America, and it was a cattle ranch, and the generator on the ranch went out. The cattle are going crazy, and there's a disc-shaped object that's coming down, and it looks like it's going to land. It hovers about 25 feet above the ground. And the guard dog, Topo, goes, all the other dogs are barking and running away. Topo goes running towards this craft, barking hysterically. He is in attack mode. About 15, 20 feet from the craft, he stops dead as if something stopped him. He sits down and starts to whimper. And the craft eventually moves away. In the next couple days, Topo's lethargic. He stops eating. They find him like 3 days later, dead on that spot where he had been stopped. They do a necropsy, an animal autopsy. They find out that his organs had all been superheated. His organs had basically been cooked. And the fat on his body, under his skin, had been liquefied, and his fat actually ran through his skin. So something like a microwave, intense radiation. That I am so sad about this, and angry that this what was this dog going to do to this UFO 25 feet above?
Right.
Did they intentionally harm the dog? I'd hate to think that. But yeah, that was just a horrible case. So poor Topo.
That's awful.
Yeah, very disturbing.
But then again, it makes you wonder too, when these things come down low, if they are spewing out radiation.
Yeah, there was a case in Valparaiso, Florida, not all that long ago. The human witnesses actually felt drawn to this. It was a rectangular shaped craft, which is fairly rare. They said they've had feelings of calm and elation, and the dog and the cat, instead of running away, they were drawn towards this craft. And you think, what a wonderful experience, except in the following days, they developed blisters, their hair fell out, nauseous, showing all of these signs. Again, you'd hate to think, was this craft intentionally drawing them towards
Mhm.
it somehow, knowing they were going to get this dose of radiation, or was it just a byproduct? So there are dangers involved in any type of pursuit like this. You may not want to go running towards a craft and try to touch it
Right.
or get as close as possible, because you don't know what might happen to you.
Well, see, while you're talking about this, that's what makes me wonder if maybe when people get abducted and get sent back, maybe part of what's going on when they're aboard ship is they're getting the radiation out of their system and then sending them back.
Oh,
Where with the animals, when they go towards it, they don't have that because they're not taking the animals to remove the radiation.
oh, I've never heard that as a
Because
possibility.
well, you'd think that
Yeah.
if an animal is feeling all this radiation, what are the humans feeling as they get close to this thing?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And then there was the, other cases where people seem to get radiation burns or some sort of chemical burns. Um, so yeah, you just have to be careful. Um, I know if I saw something landing, I would probably go running towards it, but may, maybe I wouldn't go quite up to it. So yeah.
They'd get me easy. I'd have my camera out. I'd be too busy taking pictures, and then all of a sudden I'd be on board. Boom, that's it. Wouldn't even be paying attention, you know. Um, Now, with the sightings of UFOs and these contact with animals, has it increased over the years?
I think it has, only because I think in this area at least, a lot more population and a lot more people have dogs that are, out and about. I don't hear so many of the cattle reactions because a lot of the farms are in this area are disappearing.
Hmm.
So it all depends, but certainly uh, so many dog and cat reactions. As I said, that's what sparked this whole thing. I'd interview 50 people,
Hmm.
and 40 of them, the whole sighting began because their dog was going ballistic or their cat was suddenly screaming, trying to get in. So yeah, it's whatever is happening is hasn't slowed down. Let's put it that way.
Hmm. I mean, with everything that's starting to go on now, where there's going to be more disclosure and stuff, and maybe who knows, if there's going to be more of them showing up as people become more relaxed with the idea that they're out there. Perhaps we should keep an eye on the animals, to see when before they're going to show up.
Yes, yes. If that committee was smart, that new government committee, they would have a special subsection for animal reactions. Absolutely.
I just find all this interesting, in that I've never thought about this part of it. But probably nobody else has either, really, about the UFO thing and how it would affect an animal.
There there have been isolated studies. NICAP had a animal reaction collection
Hmm.
um, back in the 60s. I think it was. A Flying Saucer Review magazine did a several part series where they just, did brief mentions. They collected all of these stories from around the world. And then probably the best study, there was a woman who was part of MUFON. Her name was Joan Woodward, and she did a really nice scientific study. This percentage had this reaction, and listing probably about 100 cases. And I think one of her footnotes was actually one of the most remarkable statements that I don't know if she appreciated what she found. She listed, triangles and spheres and discs and cylinders and other and all, and the shape of the craft had no bearing on the animal reaction.
Hmm.
And I think that is huge. That to me speaks to a common technology regardless of the shape of the craft. If the animals are still reacting the same way, whether it's a triangle, a modern triangle or an old-fashioned flying saucer, what does that tell you? So I think that has some very interesting implications that people need to look into.
Now, my question is, the people that you've interviewed about this, were the people abducted and not the animals?
Oh, that's a great question. I think they don't know for the most part. They'll talk about their own experience, and as an aside say, "Yeah, and my dog wasn't right the next couple of days."
Mm-hmm.
I don't know that. Trying to think, nobody I've spoken to has said their animals have gone with them, but I think there may be a couple of cases of that. But I'll have to look into that. I'll have to,
It's interesting when you think about it, because if they're experimenting on us to see how, what makes us tick, and looking at our DNA, you'd think that they would want to look at animals, because animals are a completely different species from us, whether it's
yes.
an elephant
Yeah.
or whatever.
Yeah. I mean, a good scientist doesn't just look at rats, he looks at all different types. So if they're doing some sort of experiment or study, certainly would want to look at different, you know.
How do you say rats? It makes me laugh. Can you imagine if the aliens were looking at rats? Talk about you living
Take the
forever.
rats, please. Abduct all the rats you want.
But see, if they were going to look at something for something that would live forever and live through anything, there you go.
Yeah.
There's
Yeah.
right there.
Yeah, I often think rats are aliens the way they like you said, they can just live through an apocalypse.
And still come out. And
Right.
eat radioactive stuff. They don't care.
Yeah.
They don't care. I find what you do interesting. As a branch off from ghost hunting, I find this really fascinating to look into this, because, like I said, I never really knew about this before, as far as the alien connection with animals. That there would even be a reaction there.
Yeah. Yeah, I just followed the evidence, I interviewed enough people and read enough cases that when I first thought, I said I should really look into this. Well, what is there going to be beyond dogs and maybe cattle and
Mm-hmm.
okay, goats, elephants, this, that, and then with the Phoenix Zoo case, when I came upon that, I said, okay, that's a clean sweep. And I would love to know, with the USOs, fish are so sensitive to so many things. What's going on under the water we don't know about? That one case where the fish are jumping out of the water. There are cases where there's a UFO and either fish seem drawn to it
Mm-hmm.
or they just leave the area. So something's going on. So, it's hard enough to get information evidence on land. I don't know what kind of sensing equipment you'd need in the water to see what's happening.
Mm-hmm.
But I would imagine, everything from whales to octopuses must be affected
Mm-hmm.
uh, by what's going on under the water.
Because when you think of the sightings that people have had too, of these things rising out of the water, what are they, like you say? What are they doing underwater?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Lakes, rivers, oceans. That's one of the Hudson Valley here with its the Hudson River and all of its lakes and reservoirs. Many people have seen craft, coming up out of the water or going back into it,
Mm-hmm.
or actually drawing water. You've probably heard of those cases. They're actually sucking the water out of the lakes, and how is that affecting the poor fish and everything, in the water. So, I would love to, if there was an incident where suddenly there's some sort of USO flap in a particular area, wouldn't it be something to have some sort of monitoring system under the water to see what the fish are doing? Because again, I'm sure that would be the early warning system that something's coming.
Again, I would think it would be a vibration thing
Mm-hmm.
with them.
Yeah.
Certain vibrations in the water, like the shark.
Mm-hmm.
The shark doesn't. I mean, the shark. Yeah, if you have blood on you, the shark will react. But what the shark is actually reacting to is the way you're moving in the water. The minute you start thrashing, it thinks of you as food.
Mm-hmm.
I would think that it would work the same way with fish too.
I would think so. Whatever those craft underwater are generating is probably not anything they've encountered. Animals don't like new, unknown things.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
I think that's what is being presented to them. Whatever it is, vibration, infrasound, high frequency, it's something they do not like and they fear.
Mm-hmm. This is really fascinating.
Yeah, it's got me to spend years of my life on it.
Absolutely fascinating. You know, because yeah, I can agree. The sound, the EMF levels, just even like you say, rumbles in the earth.
Hmm.
Things like that are gonna get an animal's attention because they're so used to being connected. When you look way back, even with the Native Americans, they will tell you that the animals are connected to the earth
Yes,
in
and we
some.
used to be a
Yeah,
lot more
right.
before this modern age. There's a indigenous people in Australia, Kuuk something like that. They have no words for left and right. Everything is by the compass readings. They will come up to you and say, "Could you move to the northeast so I could sit down?" Or that they are so attuned to the earth that people have studied them. They said they just have these natural compasses. They feel the difference, and there have been studies done. Some people have fabulous senses of directions,
Mhm.
others do not, and humans have the same ingredients. The magnetite in our brains. There's a protein called cryptochrome in the eyes, which are sensitive to these magnetic fields.
Mhm.
We have them just like other animals, but we sit indoors, we surround ourselves with these artificial EMF fields, and I think we lose that ability. And peoples who like these indigenous peoples in Australia who live in nature,
Mhm.
they have retained that ability. So there's actually groups around the world. I think the Philippines, Africa, South America, Central America, people who live on the land, they just know where north, south, east, west is. It's another sense that
Right.
they have not lost.
Because it pulls on their body a certain way. I can
Mhm.
understand that. When you think about us have it's like psychic abilities that are hidden within us once we start getting older because we get involved with other stuff. While this
Mhm.
EMF thing is hidden within us too. I mean, look at all the people that suffered when they put the smart meters in people's houses
Yes.
and what people went through.
Yeah, and the cell towers, and even though they say, "Oh, no, no, it's only a certain radius," Bluetooth, you name it. So we are very sensitive, and we should be aware of that and make sure we're not damaging ourselves
Hmm.
with the artificial EMF. And get outside, take your shoes off, and enjoy nature more, and see how you feel when you're away from all of that. Keep your cell phone at home, and just feel the natural earth energies. They're there. All the other animals are navigating by them. We should too.
What do you have to say to somebody that thinks their animal might have experienced this? Who should they contact, or how does that work?
Well, you can call and report it, but they're really, to MUFON or New Fork or something like that. But I don't know of a single investigator who specializes in this, or even is aware of it. So at this point, not a lot you can do. Of course, if you think your animal's been harmed as a result, go to a vet and try not to tell them exactly what happened, because they'll probably think you're crazy. But yeah, there is, if people have stories, I would love to, I'd love to hear them, because I'm trying to, amass as much evidence as possible.
Absolutely, absolutely. One more question before I let you go is, like I said, do you have recent cases of this, or do you think it's tapering off, or do you think it's increasing?
Oh, I absolutely have recent cases, probably just within the last couple of months. The dogs were going crazy, and my cat kept acting weird, so I looked out the window and saw this. So yes, it's happening as we speak somewhere. I'm sure somewhere around the world, there's probably 100 cases of this happening right now. I have no doubt.
That's fantastic. Well, it's incredible and fantastic, but sad at the same time for the animals. I feel for the animals that are
Oh,
experiencing
absolutely.
it. Linda, this hour went by so fast.
It did, but I enjoyed it.
I want to thank you for coming on. I really appreciate it. I learned so much tonight about this.
Oh, my pleasure.
It's something that never even occurred to me till I heard you talking about it before, and that's why I wanted to talk to you about it in person, because wow, it's mind blowing to think about.
Yeah, and I hope all your listeners start paying attention to this now, in future cases, and for investigators, go back and look over your notes for other cases and see if there's, animals are not making things up. You can say that the human is imagining something, but a herd of cows, a bunch of, dogs, horses, goats, whatever, they're not looking for their 5 minutes of fame. Their reactions are genuine.
Absolutely, absolutely. Where can people find you?
I'm all over the place. I have my own podcast, UFO Headquarters. I have a Facebook page, Hudson Valley UFOs, and my website is GoToZim, GOTOZIM.com, and all my books are on Amazon.
Absolutely fantastic. I would love to get you on and another day and talk more about this with you.
Absolutely.
I just find it so fascinating, and thank you for coming on tonight. I really appreciate it.
My pleasure. Take care.
All right, you have a great evening.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. All I can say is wow. I mean, if you don't stop, if you don't start looking at your animals closer, whether you're out walking them at night or whatever, I don't know what you're going to do now, because I believe it. I can understand this reaction. Like I said, I saw it with my dogs a few times. Anyway, I'm going to be teaching a psychic development class next week. So I'm going to remind everybody that's 5 p.m. next Saturday evening. And check it out at the California Haunts Paranormal Investigation Team meetup site. Also, the Psych Class 2, Saturday, September 10th at 5 p.m. Pacific. You can get that over at the meetup site as well. If you liked the show today, please hit that follow button on Facebook. If you liked it and you're listening on YouTube, please hit the subscribe button on YouTube. It's that little ghost down in the bottom right-hand corner. And if you're watching on Twitch, please hit that subscribe button. Anyway, tomorrow, and I'm glad she mentioned some of the stuff she did, because tomorrow's guest, John LeMay, is an author who lives in Roswell, New Mexico, and he's done a lot of study about the Roswell UFO sightings and all that. But he's also a historian who likes to go back and look at the cowboy years and things like that. And what he's found is that some of the cowboys have reported seeing vampires, werewolves, ghosts, and all this other stuff. So he's going to come on and talk about that, about their sightings, UFOs too, like she was talking about UFOs. So he's going to have a lot to talk about. So that'll be tomorrow at 6:30 p.m. Pacific. His name is John LeMay. He's going to be with us. All right. If you like the show, share it with 5 people. If you hated the show, give it to them. Get even with them. Share with 5 of the enemies. I don't care. I just want people to watch, right? Be sure to subscribe to our YouTube site if you're watching from YouTube. And you see that banner down at the bottom. That's because California Haunts does not take any money whatsoever to investigate. We don't ask for anything. If people want to donate, that's fine. And I still got to pay bills here. I've got internet to pay, and other expenses, equipment. Something breaks, I got to replace it. Just like with the paranormal group, same thing. If you could help me out a little bit, because I love doing this show, I want to keep bringing it to you. We're starting our 3rd year in January with this show. In September. What I'm thinking of January. In September with the show. And I want to keep bringing these great guests to you guys like Linda. So if you could help me out a little bit, that'd be great at paypal.com at California Haunts. Or if you're uncomfortable with PayPal, Venmo, and then type in California Haunts. Anyway, I appreciate each and every one of you. Our numbers are going up, and it's because of you. It's because of you sharing. It's because of you sharing the word and getting the word out about the show. All right? So we're getting a lot more interest in the show, and I'm real excited about it. And I want to thank each and every one of you and everyone that has donated in the past. Thank you. I really appreciate it. But anyway, I'm going to send you off with Linda's information, and then I'm going to call it a night. So here we go. So the website is www.gotozim.com. And the first book is Animal Reactions to UFOs. And you've got Hudson Valley UFOs, Mysterious Stone Sites. And you've got Ghost Investigators. I think it's a comic book thing that she's working on. And then you've got Ghosts of Kirkland County. And of course, like she said, you can get those from her website, or they are also available at Amazon. Alrighty, I will see you guys tomorrow at 6:30 p.m. Pacific. Have a good night.